A Muslim terrorist went on a stabbing spree at a festival of diversity in Germany recently, targeting people's throats, killing 3 people and seriously wounding 8 others. The worst thing about this is that because it's a festival of diversity, victims might have thought he was one of the acts. Oh, they've got immersive street theatre now showing the downsides of diversity. That's unexpected. What was expected, however, was that the police didn't release a description of the man, even though he was on the run, so he was still a threat to the public, and witnesses had given a description of him to the press. So we all knew it was an Islamic extremist because the police had said it was just a man, just a generic man. I also knew that within hours the mainstream media would have worked out a way to blame the far right. I even posted, watch the media cycle, within hours it'll be far right bigots exploit acceptable situation for their evil anti-getting stabbed in the neck agenda. Right on cue, Sky News appeared saying, the real concern is this being used by the far right to stir up hatred.
When you look at something like this, you just really worry about how it could be used by those on the far right to stir up hatred. To look at this and say, well, here's the justification. This is why this will be jumped on by those on the far right to say, well, there's some justification to our cause, and that's concerning. And nobody, ISIS is a terrorist organisation. This is plainly being treated as a terrorist attack, as it should be. And the police and authorities should be able to do their work and bring the perpetrator, whoever it might be, to justice. But I do, it is concerning, I think, that potentially the way, this could play out. We've seen the rise of the riots in Germany particularly, but also in this country and across Europe as well.
You know what, Yasmin, I saw on social media earlier people saying, what did this person look like? Now, were they asking to do a public service, so people keep an eye out if they are still at large? Or were they up to no good in asking that question?
No, and as Theo says, the whole riots thing and how it was instigated. And look, I'm a Muslim.
I mean, never mind the relentless stream of people being stabbed in the neck and killed. The real problem is those horrible bigots who want to stop people getting stabbed in the neck. It's not just Sky News. The FT ran with this. Why Germany's stabbing attack has rekindled the EU's far-right fears. Yes, being worried about getting stabbed in the neck is now far-right apparently. Politico wailed, German far-right seizes on knife attack ahead of crucial state elections. But do you think if the tables were turned and this terrorist was motivated by the mythological far-right, the media would be tiptoeing around the issue and warning that the real problem is this being used by the far-left? Of course not. If he'd been far-right, they'd be demanding all far-right indoctrination centres be demolished and an immediate end to immigration from far-right countries. Look how differently the media covers far-right terror. In June 2017, Darren Osborne drove a van into a crowd leaving a mosque in Finsbury Park in North London, killing 1 person and injuring 9 others. It's a horrific killing, but it's revealing that I had to go back nearly a decade to find an example of a deadly far-right attack. In Britain, police believe the catalyst for Osborne's descent into hate was seeing a BBC drama about a sexual abuse scandal involving Muslim men. Did the media, hours after the killing, say the real worry was how it could be exploited by socialists to drive anti-right-wing hatred? Nope, instead it provoked a great deal of hand-wringing about how to deal with the burgeoning threat from the far right and Britain's apparently huge problem with Islamophobia. Britain must address the pervasive white noise against Muslims. Why we need to talk about the media's role in far-right radicalisation. Islamophobia has seeped into the public consciousness as British far-right movement grows. There's much less soul-searching about an ideology that continues to grow in Europe despite it inspiring a relentless drumbeat of fatal terror attacks. German politicians also focused on the danger from politicians who are anti-neck stabbing. Interior Minister Nancy Faeser said, "We must not be intimidated by those who now want to sow hatred," and urged people to stand together. I mean, maybe when you're standing together, leave a bit of space to make it harder for the terrorists to stab you. She proposed that the length of knives people are legally allowed to carry should be reduced from 12 centimetres to 6 centimetres, which is great news for people with neck skin that's more than 6 centimetres thick. Another centrist politician, Daniela Behrens from the SPD, said populists are trying to divide society. This smearing of any politician who suggests something be done to stop people being stabbed in the neck as a populist who's just crassly appealing to the craven desires of the population not to be stabbed in the neck and is purely motivated by a desire to divide society. Do the people saying this ever stop to check their logic? Maybe society would be less divided if utopian politicians stopped importing ideologies that want to kill us. Other state bigwigs suggested that Germans just accept that getting stabbed in the neck is now an unavoidable part of life. The chief of police, Marcus Rorrell, said everyone has to decide for themselves whether they go to festivities, whether they go to football matches, whether they use public transport. Facing an impending wipeout in elections from right-wing politicians, a couple of centrist politicians made noises that they would do something for once about the neck stabbing. Friedrich Merz basically demanded a pause on refugees from Syria and Afghanistan, and Germany's Premier Olaf Scholz panicked and promised to deport more criminals. He also promised tougher weapons laws, slightly disregarding the fact that these attacks have been done with knives, and it doesn't sound practical to force Germans to cut their schnitzel with a spoon. Perhaps we should be looking at the motivation behind the attacks instead, and why a man from Syria who hates Germans needs to be in Germany. But overall, instead of tackling mass immigration and Islamist violence, the main parties focus on hobbling right-wing politicians using lawfare. They give them convictions for pretty spurious reasons. AfD politician Marie-Therese Kaiser was convicted for hate speech after sharing official government statistics showing Afghan immigrants are hugely overrepresented as sexual offenders in Germany. Another AfD politician was convicted for comparing COVID measures with the persecution of Jews by the Nazis. It's a silly comparison, but to jail someone over it, where do they think this is? Keir Starmer's Britain? And an AfD leader has been convicted twice for using the apparently Nazi slogan, everything for Germany. I mean, horror at the thought that Germans should put Germany first. The AfD, which is rapidly becoming a mainstream political party, is officially labelled a terrorist organisation, which gives the state huge powers to snoop on them and find dirt to smear them with. But maybe the police's time would be better spent focusing on actual terrorists. Instead, they focus on political enemies and people who say the wrong thing. While the Diversity Festival attacker was sharpening his blades, police were putting resources into ordering a social media platform to reveal the identity of a user who'd called a politician fat. This is the politician, by the way. She is fat. And the terror threat is changing. The war in Gaza has inspired a new wave of Islamists. I'm not sure what the situation is in Germany, but with 40,000 Islamists on terror watch lists in the UK, our security services in the West seem to have worked out how to stop coordinated large-scale attacks, such as the 7/7 bombing attacks in London that killed 56 and wounded nearly 800, but it's much harder to stop a lone man with a knife. But left-wing ideology means that mainstream parties just don't want to deal with it. The left is utopian. They've decided that mass immigration is good in and of itself. Therefore, it must continue, despite clear evidence that there are some downsides, particularly if you like your head attached to your shoulders. Germany's former leader, Angela Merkel, threw open Germany's borders partly as a humanitarian effort to relieve the Syrian refugee crisis, but mainly because she's committed to the ideology of diversity equaling strength. Her motto for it was, "We're schiffen das," or "We can do it." 1.7 million people were granted asylum in Germany between 2015 and 2019, making it the country with the 5th highest population of refugees in the world. If anyone questions these utopian ideals or points out that this is a dangerous experiment, bringing millions of people from radically different cultures into the West hasn't been done before. Well, if anybody says that, then they must be a bigot. Everyone knows utopia will require some sacrifice to achieve, so shut up and take the stabbings, you bigots. But people are getting tired of this approach. In a survey last month, just over half of Germans said they still felt safe in public spaces. That's down from 2017, which even after waves of mass immigration and mass terror attacks across Europe, 3/4 of people in Germany felt safe. In 2023 alone, violent crime rose by 8.6% in Germany. The proportion of non-German suspects of all reported crimes rose to 41%. So that's getting on for half of all crime in Germany being committed by people of non-German descent. Mainstream parties across the West have two options. One, you can continue to suppress people's opinions and call everyone racist and criminalise anyone who doesn't like being stabbed in the neck while the problem gets worse. Or two, you can do something about the problem. They will, of course, pick one because it's easier. Unfortunately for these politicians, we do still live in a democracy, so despite how they try and twist things in the media and suppress political opponents, people will vote in parties who actually listen to them and do what they want. Anyway, thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this video, please share it, and you can buy me half a pint of beer on the link below. And if you want to support me making these videos and get exclusive content, be part of a nice community of the only sane people left in the West, then sign up to my Patreon. There's a link below. Anyway, thanks for listening. I've been Leo Kears. Bye. Bye bye.